What if I told you that the worst thing that happened to you could be the best thing that happened to you? Imagine going blind at 20 years old. Imagine never being able to see another sunset. Never seeing your partner. Never seeing your children. Imagine emerging from that experience, seeing everything more clearly. I don't have to imagine that. That's the story of my life.
Left turn, more.
The facts are far less relevant than the stories we tell ourselves. We all become our stories.
The biggest influence in your life is you.
Victims stay trapped. Visionaries bounce back. I lost my vision to give you yours.
I see sunrise and the wavy waters behind you. So the
Yep. So if I can't be there, maybe I can virtually be there. That's the idea.
Okay.
We all need a little bit of that with COVID, right?
Yeah.
Let's try to transport ourselves to a happy place.
Yeah, it's all aesthetics. So today I have a person with me who doesn't need any introduction. That is Chad Foster. He recently released a book. So he's like the man himself who's doing multiple things. He's a motivational speaker. He's an inspiration for those who think, limitations in life is something that can, make you or break you or maybe stop you from doing something that you really want to do. So, to break all those stereotypes and barriers, we have Chad Foster today. We'll talk about his journey. We'll talk about how he thinks about life, his new book that has already released. How can you get it? So over to you, Chad. Please take it over.
Thank you for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation and share some lessons and some observations. Certainly, I've had a bit of a unique journey in my life, pretty atypical, I would think, for most people to think about what I've experienced. And so hopefully I'm able to impart some of those things that I've learned over the course of the last 30 years of my life with you all, and maybe people can take something away from that.
You recently released a book of yours. Is it your first book on an official note?
Yeah, it is my first book, and it came out last February. It's published in partnership with HarperCollins Leadership, and the title of the book is Blind Ambition, and the subtitle is How to Go from Victim to Visionary.
Okay, so if you have to describe your book in short, how would you do that? Like short and simple.
Short and simple, it is a memoir of my life, but it's not just a chronological series of events from my life. It's what did I learn on my journey of growing up and having limitations of eyesight and then going blind and then evolving and becoming happier and more successful after I went blind than before when I could see. And so it's very much a story about resilience and determination. So my vision is better. My eyesight is gone, but my vision has never been better. And that's because eyesight's what you see around you, but vision is what you see inside you.
For people who just really get inspired to read your book, what is one thing that you have most spoken about in the book? As in, when you felt like, being a victim of life, what helped you grow up? What helped you cope up with the situations?
For a month, I lived with people who faced far greater challenges than I did. Some people had mental impairments in addition to being blind. Some people had to go and get dialysis because they had diabetes on top of being blind. And some people were deaf and blind, and they were facing that every day. And we had to, for these people, talk with an interpreter who would then sign into their hands. And despite those challenges, they were getting a guide dog to travel independently. So that was a very inspiring moment for me. Living with these brave people for nearly a month, I had been looking at the world through my lens, and my lens was my life is very hard and it's very unfair, and I have all these challenges that none of my friends had these challenges. None of my friends were sight impaired. None of my friends had a disability. And that was the lens that I saw the world with. Then when I went to get my first guide dog, I saw the world through these other people's lenses and the challenges that they face. And so leaving there was a groundbreaking moment for me, because it really forced me to shift my perspective and focus on the things that I had to be grateful for. And I started realizing, you know what, I have all of my cognitive faculties. I don't have any mental impairments. I don't have any hearing problems. I'm not on dialysis. And then my mind started shifting a little bit more to think about things that maybe most people don't think about. They take for granted. Like, for example, I was born in a very opportunistic country, a great, one of the wealthiest nations in the world. I was born at the dawn of the information age. How many people think about, none of us make the choice to be born where we're born or in the time period we're born. I could have just as easily been born in a different country in a different time, say back in the 1100s or the 1200s, where it was far harder to live. And certainly if you didn't have any eyesight. But we don't choose when we're born. We don't choose where we're born. We don't choose to what family we're born. These things happen to us. And I think many of us, myself included, tend to take these things for granted. So all of a sudden, I started thinking about the world and my place in it more three-dimensionally than just my own immediate surroundings, right? I started thinking about how probable was it that I would be born in the United States at a time when the services economy was getting ready to lift off and technology made so many things possible. And I had all these other senses in addition to, that I had eyesight for 20 something years, but I had all of my other faculties. So that moment was a real tipping point for me. And I came back with a new outlook on my life and the world and my place in the world.
When people are in most vulnerable situations, they feel most about their weaknesses rather than focusing on what their strengths are. So that's what exactly helped you.
In fact, there's a theory out there that this laws aversion principle teaches us that we would need twice a possible gain to risk a loss. So meaning to risk losing $10, as an example, the gain would need to be $20. So it's really hard for us when something is taken away from us. And that's just human nature. We're all wired like that. And certainly I was no exception. It was hard for me to give up my eyesight. It was hard for me to reimagine who I would be. We ask kids all the time, what do you want to be when you grow up? And none of them say they want to be a blind person. So I had to figure out at that point, what was my new self-identity? I had always seen myself as a hard-charging young man ready to make a difference in the world. It's really hard to see yourself as hard-charging when you're not even able to walk independently. So I had to reimagine my self-identity. I had to reimagine my hopes, my dreams, my entire life. What did I want to be? What could I be? I didn't even know what was possible. And so when life happens to us, we have to take a step back and accept the things that we can't control. And in my case, the blindness was that thing that I couldn't control. So the way that we move ourselves towards acceptance for something is reimagining how we can make it look good. I had to figure out how I could make blind look good. And until I could move my mind to that point, the odds of me being happy or successful were not very good. And so whatever it is in your life, whatever your listeners are facing, when something happens to them that they can't control, if they can take a step back and just imagine how they can make that look good, reimagine a vision for themselves in that situation and how they can make it look good. And the idea here is to be very bold, and the bolder, the better, frankly, because it inspires people to action and really let their imagination run free.
So with that, I really heard you saying when you came to Pune office of Red Hat, it's about the stories that we tell ourselves, right? You always talk about it. Very few things touch you very deeply. So this is one thing which touched me very deeply, and it's been like 2 or 2.5 years. It is still in my mind.
Yeah. It's a really powerful concept, and one of my core beliefs as to how I came back out of this major transition better than before. Every human on the planet becomes the stories that they tell themselves. You become your stories. I become my stories. And if I'm telling myself a story of poor me, then that's who I'm going to be. That's who your listeners will be. That's who you will be. If you're telling yourself a story of poor me and I have bad luck and this is terrible, you should expect nothing more. That's exactly what you will get. But if you're able to tell yourself a better story, a story of I've got this, whatever this is, and for me it was going blind, I'm going to own this because we have to own our lives. If we don't own our lives, nobody will. I'm going to own this life. I'm going to own these circumstances. I may not be responsible for all of these circumstances, but I have to be accountable for my life and its outcome. So I'm going to own them, and I'm going to make this look good. Whatever this is, I'm going to make blind look good. I took my greatest weakness, my blindness, and said, you know what, Chad, this happened to you because you are strong enough to overcome it and use it to help other people. So I told myself for years and years and years that I went blind because I am mentally strong. Well, guess what that does? That creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where you become mentally strong. And so whether it's blindness that happens to you or changes in profession or changes at home, or now whatever happens to me, I've convinced myself that I am strong enough to deal with it. There aren't days when I have bad days. Of course, we all have bad days. We all have good days. The key is paying attention to which stories are playing in your mind and then weeding out the stories that don't take you where you want to go. You want to be telling yourself stories that take you where you want to go, because you will become those stories. When this first happened to me, I was in college losing my eyesight. I tried to hide from it. I tried to hide it. I tried to pretend that it wasn't happening. I tried to pretend that my eyesight was better than it really was. I didn't use a cane. I didn't use a guide dog. And I really wasn't being true to who I was, because I was trying to pretend as if my eyesight was just fine. And until I could not pretend anymore, I did pretend. And that happened when I lost my eyesight completely in college. And then I went to get a guide dog. And then I come back from getting my guide dog with this 100-pound German Shepherd. And that was a real blessing for me because it forced me to be me. It forced me to own my situation. Now, you can hide having poor vision when you don't have to use a cane or you don't have to use a guide dog. When you walk into a university classroom with a 100-pound German Shepherd, there's no hiding it anymore, right? Everybody sees the dog. And at that point, you have to own it. I had to own it. And that forced me to get comfortable with my situation and my disability very quickly. And I'd say that it forced me to love me. And we all have imperfections that we're not proud of. And my situation taught me that, you know what, I absolutely want to be a better version of Chad every day. I want to be a little bit better. But there are certain imperfections about Chad that I just can't change, will never change. So all I can do is embrace them and love me despite and eventually because of them. And that was a gift that I received early on in my life, and I feel very fortunate to have received it. Can you see him?
No.
I have to pick him up, I think. Come here, Sarge. Here's Sarge.
Oh.
So he's not very small.
I know, it must be heavy.
He's
heavy.
100 pounds. 100 pounds. I don't know what that is in kilos. I guess that's what, about 50 kilos? 50 kilograms? He's a good dog, though. He's a good dog, aren't you?
Yeah, must be your family, right? No less than family.
Oh, no, definitely no less than family. He takes a lot of responsibility when we travel. He is responsible for getting me from point A to point B without incident. And he understands there's a lot of responsibility with that. So a lot of people are, they think about him as a pet. I think about him as a working member of the family. He works just as hard as my wife and I. He puts on his harness and goes to work every day. So when people are like, well, why don't you just, don't worry about Sarge, he's just a pet. I'm like, no, he actually, if it weren't for my dog, I wouldn't be able to do my job. So my dog is very, very important in our house. He is the way that I think about it is he is responsible for making sure that there's food to eat, right? He's responsible for making sure that we can pay the mortgage. He's responsible. If without him, I wouldn't be able to do that.
That's beautiful. I had a dream to cover that. And because he's just, unsolicited part of your personality. When people think of Chad Foster, they also think of, he will have a Surge beside him.
Yeah. Well, Sarge has his own Instagram handle, Sarge the Guide Dog. I am not kidding. His own account, he's got a little bit of a fan club going, and he should, right? He's a super dog. How many dogs do you know of that you can take all over the world? I was there in Pune, put on a 35-hour flight from Atlanta to Pune, and he's fine with that. We get off and we hang out in Pune for a week, and then we fly back. And he's been to India, he's been to China, we've been to Japan a few times, we've been to Singapore, we've been to Korea, all over Europe, all over North America. So he's a pretty unique dog, and he handles it. Frankly, he does better than I do on these flights because, you sit in a plane for 30 something hours and you get tired of sitting on the plane, and he just lays there, very obedient, very calm, very collected. And the rest of us are ready to just get off the plane at whatever cost, right? We're losing our minds a little bit after 30 hours, but he's a very patient dog, which is a lot of fun to be around.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's like a very funny, lame joke. But when he comes to India or anything like that, when you go back to America, does he complain like I have a jet lag?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't complain, but I definitely saw that there was an incident in China. We went to Shanghai for sales kickoff a couple of years ago, and I remember you could tell he was jet lagged when we got there. He made this really kind of silly mistake, and it was he not only made the wrong turn, but he didn't make it with the same confidence. Usually when the dog's walking, there's what I would say is tug in the harness. He's pulling kind of hard on the harness because he's confident and he knows where he's going. He made the wrong turn, and he's waving back and forth like he's about to fall over because he's so tired and jet lagged. And it's one of those where I'm like, look, yeah, I get it. I'm jet lagged too. Don't worry about it. It happens.
How much of Surge have you covered in your book, Blind Ambition? Is he featured over there?
There's a little bit about him there, not a whole lot. Honestly, I talk because I only had Sarge for a year or two when I wrote the book. Now you'll read a lot about Miles, my first guide dog, and then Romeo, my second guide dog. And I had Miles for 7 years. I had Romeo for 10 years. And when I retired Romeo, when I took his purpose away, he was very melancholy and almost depressed. In fact, I think he was depressed when he didn't have any work to do. And so I think there's something there for all of us when we get into retirement and we don't have a purpose. Is that really a place we want to be? And I think all of us need purpose in our lives, especially in retirement. And so people who tend to give up everything in their retirement and do nothing, I think they lose a reason to keep living, frankly. And I think we can see people decline much more quickly, but people who maintain a sense of purpose their entire lives, I think tend to have maybe more fulfilled and potentially even longer lives. But I noticed that with Romeo, when I took his work away, when I retired him, he was not happy at all. He was very depressed.
It's so fulfilling to know about your life because, sometimes you just cover very deep stuff. As in the retirement part that you covered was something I really didn't think of, but it really hits hard. As in when I think about years ahead, as in we really need purpose. We really need work. What are we without work, right? Or without dogs without work.
Completely. I think, yeah. Well, exactly. Then we're just existing. And I think purpose is a big part of it. And I found, there's a book that I read when I was at Harvard Business School, learning under the professor of authentic leadership there. He's a senior fellow at Harvard Business School, Bill George. He's also the former chair and CEO of Medtronic, the world's largest medical supply manufacturer. And he teaches about how to discover your true north. In fact, that's the name of his book, is Discover Your True North. In fact, he's featuring me in an upcoming 3rd edition of True North that he's putting out. And I'm learning from him, along with my other classmates there, about finding your purpose, finding your true north. And that was a really earth-shattering moment for me, because maybe I should put more effort behind this, because people had told me that I was inspiring, but I didn't really take it seriously because I wasn't doing anything to try and be inspiring. I was just doing my job to the best of my ability, or doing what I had to do, you know, whether it's hopping a flight to go to China and not being able to see, or just, you know, going to talk to my daughter's elementary school class. I was just doing what I had to do. So I didn't really see it as all that inspiring. And then it became obvious to me that whether or not I saw it as inspiring, if I could teach people what I know about what I've learned, that could actually make going blind worth it, which is a really unusual thought to have. And I've noticed that firsthand when I was elected as the graduating speaker there at Harvard, because I did use it for the first time, my story, to try and reach people. And the impact was phenomenal. One gentleman that came up to me afterwards, you know, his daughter had passed the year before due to cancer. And something I said gave him hope. Another guy was going through a divorce, and something I'd said gave him the opportunity to look at the challenges he and his family were facing in a new light. And so when you have people come to you and share those lessons, the impact that you have with them, right? I'm not a real, I have to be mentally tough because of my situation. I had to be mentally tough growing up with what I grew up with. It hardened me. But when you can reach people on that level and they let you know how it helps them, it pierces all of that hard shell.
When you talk about it, it feels like wholesome. Every incident gives insight about your life, so which is lovely. I really want to get into another section of which I called a rapid fire or a fireside chat, wherein I'll ask you some questions and you just have to, describe it, whatever comes first in your mind.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, this is something that you have already answered, but let's just cover it again. Is what inspired you to write this book? What struck you at the very first?
The reason I wrote the book is so people can learn what I've learned without having to go through what I've gone through. For me to share everything about my life and the way I did, I was very exposed in the book. I am very vulnerable in the book. In fact, I was told the more vulnerable I am, the more it can connect with people. So this was very much outside of my comfort zone. But the way I challenged myself and the way I would challenge your listeners, we all know that life is very short. We're only here for a limited amount of time. What are we going to do to make a difference for people who come behind us? What are we going to do to make a difference in the world? I knew that I would never forgive myself for at least trying to make a difference. And so that's why I wrote Blind Ambition.
Beautiful. Okay. Any message for your family, particularly your wife?
Oh,
I really wanted to know this. This is something I know I kept this question because I know when she'll watch it, she'll find it like, oh my gosh, I'm in love with this.
Well, her sacrifices and helping me and helping maintain things around the house have been a huge part of our success. And so would not be here without her, but she's just a remarkable human being. She's a much better person than I am, truthfully. I've never met a more caring and loving person. So without her selflessness and tireless work, there's no way that this story would be possible.
So every wife wants to hear this, isn't it?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. And I would imagine so, because a lot of times it's, I get to go out and write the book and get on stage and tell the story. The truth of the matter is, without having the support at home from her and what she does with the family and helping to create that foundation, I wouldn't have the time or the energy to go off and do the things that I'm doing. So it's definitely teamwork.
Beautiful. You work in a team. This is called partnership. I love it. Are you proud of yourself now more than you were ever in your life?
I think maybe I think the thing I'm most proud of is stepping through the fear. When I think about where I'm at, I've had major accomplishments in my life. I've had, business successes and things like that. Yeah, I've won multi-billion-dollar deals, and those feel great, but nothing feels like helping another person. When you help someone, you connect with them in a deep and a meaningful way, and you help them get over or navigate the things in their lives. I think that's what I'm most proud of, is the fact that I moved beyond those fears with the intent of helping other people. And that's what motivated me to, even though I was scared the first few times, to keep getting on stage and sharing my story, and to write down my stories and articles, and now in Blind Ambition, and just put myself out there without really a lot of hesitation. At first there was some hesitation, but now I'm so comfortable sharing, because I do see that there is impact for other people. And so if I had to say the thing I'm most proud of, it's stepping through the fear, excuse me, because outside of our comfort zones is where life begins. If you're never getting outside of your comfort zone, then you're never growing. And I've found that life begins outside of our comfort zone. So we have to step through the fear, because that is where growth takes place.
Wonderful. What gives you most contentment and completeness about yourself and life?
The thing that makes me most fulfilled is knowing that now I'm trying to live a more balanced life. I think at first I was very individually focused on myself and my career. I was living a very selfish life, if I'm being very honest. And I was so maniacally focused on getting to my next goal in life that I didn't pause to think about the impact I should have on other people by shifting my perspective and my focus. So I think the thing that gives me the most fulfillment is moving beyond myself and thinking about the impact I can have with other people.
One word which is very close to you, and basically that describes you.
Tenacious, I would say. I would say the one word that describes me is tenacious. I don't know how to give up. I don't know how to quit. I refuse to give up. Right? I'm the guy who's going to die trying. Whatever it is, I'm going to die trying. But one word would be tenacious. If you want something badly enough, whatever it is, you can have it. If you're willing to give up, if you're willing to throw in the towel at some point, don't expect to get what you want out of life. But if you are relentless on pursuing whatever it is, if you want whatever it is more than you want to go to bed early, more than you want to sleep in, more than you want to watch TV, more than you want to goof off on your phone or Instagram or whatever, if you want it more than you want anything else in this world, then you will have it, whatever it is.
Great. So last question is, what is Chad Foster doing in next coming up years? You have any plans? New releases, new book, new podcast, anything that you are experimenting with?
Well, I've thought about a new book, writing a new book. I'm probably going to get started on that in a couple of years. I've thought about starting a podcast. That's going to take probably another 6 months to a year for me to get time to do that. But I do have a co-authored book that I'm putting out this year in partnership with Les Brown and other authors. It's a compilation book called Hungry to Speak that will be available in countries all over the world. That's coming out at the end of this year. I wrote a chapter in that book, and along with about 30 other authors. And again, it's I don't know if your listeners are familiar with Les Brown, but he's one of the top motivational speakers in the world. I'm working with Les as well, not only on the book, but in other endeavors, so that I can get my message out and I can get I can reach people in the way that they can be most affected. And so really excited about that, really excited about, again, continuing to try and do a little bit of good in the world along the way, because again, we're here for a very short time. And so we have to think, what is it we want to do with our lives? You know, just a short story. My dear friend and mentor, Ben Giesman, whom I mentioned in the book, Blind Ambition, passed last year in April of 2020 as a result of terminal brain cancer. He had contracted skin cancer, but the parting lesson he left me with that is all of our time on this earth is precious and it's limited. Whatever you want to do, whatever people you want to talk to, conversations you want to have, good you want to do in the world, dreams you want to pursue, the time to act is now. Nothing is guaranteed. Tomorrow is never guaranteed. So whatever you want to do, whatever it is, whether it's going back to school or writing a book or whatever, right? The time to act is now, because tomorrow may never come.
I'm going to go buy that book right away and start reading.
Yeah, please do. It's on Amazon. It's at Barnes and Noble. I'm not sure about in India where it's at. I know here in the States, it's on Apple iBooks. It's Bookshop, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, IndieBound, lots of different places. Anywhere that you buy books here in the States, it's available. But I know for sure it's on Amazon in India.
Great. Amazon is easily accessible and everybody can buy. I will give the link in description box so people can go buy it and read that amazing content. So with that, yeah, I think we have covered a beautiful thing in a nutshell. So whatever questions you might have, everybody, please put it in the comment box. And I would love to have you again, Chad, on my channel. It was so wonderful having you. Thank you.
I enjoyed it. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation.
Yeah, and with one quote, I'm leaving everybody, which strike my mind while talking to you is, life is too short to be little, so you make sure you enjoy it completely.
It'll be gone before you know it. If we're lucky, we'll grow old and it'll go by very quickly. If we're not so lucky, we may not grow old.
Yeah.
That's why it's called the present, right? Look back on my life and say, you know what? I don't know what was possible because I didn't try. I never tried that. I wish I would have. That's the fear that I can't live with.
Awesome. So with that, guys, we are leaving you with amazing content. Please like and share this because it's worth it. All right. Until we meet next time. Bye-bye. Chad, you want to say bye to everybody?
Bye, everyone. And if you want to follow me, by the way, you can go to my website, chaddyfoster.com. I'm on Twitter at Chaddy Foster, Instagram and Facebook, find Chaddy Foster, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. Thank you.
Yeah. And find the list, Chad's social media links in the description box.
Can you see Sarge?
No,
Sarge. Come on, buddy. You got to go right there. He is.
Oh, I see him.
There's Sarge. Can you wave hi? No waving.